everyone, and welcome back to the Colour Cave, where we like to play with art stuff. My name is Jem, and today we're going to be jumping into my much neglected sketchbook. I have a sort of compulsion just now to just draw in my sketchbook, and it's that time of year here on the farm, and we have a lot of mushrooms and fungi that pop up, and it's something that I love to draw. So what I've done is taken a few photographs and I've printed them off here just on copy paper, and this is what we're going to be focusing on today. I did take a range of photographs, so if you want to try and draw some mushrooms for yourself, if you head over to the Cave website and click on the resources tab, those pictures are there. They're free for you to use, to download, to print off, whatever you want to do with them. And if you want to join in today as well, you can also print yourself off a copy too. I've focused on these two specifically today because this is actually the same mushroom. This photograph was taken 3 days ago and this one was taken today, and I've never really thought about how mushrooms grow and develop. It's never something that's really interested me, but apparently they start like this and they just basically start to rot at the bottom, and all of this like curls up the way and you get this. Who knew? I don't even know what type of mushroom this is. It's something I should probably pay attention to. One of the things I like about drawing mushrooms is that the actual shapes of them are very, very simple shapes. You know, we've got this dome shape here, we've got a couple of straight lines, and okay, we've got little curly bits, and this is basically just an oval. Now what that lets us do is not hyper focus on the structure of the drawing, but really pay attention to the detail. And when you're working in graphite and coloured pencil, you can have lots of fun with this. I mean, you could spend hours drawing this. We're not going to spend hours drawing this today, but we are going to take a little bit of time and focus on a little bit of detail work. And it's something, especially when you're just working in graphite, that I personally find very, very, very relaxing. So let's grab a fresh page in the old sketchbook. I'm slowly working my way through this. There's not that much left in it, but I say when I'm feeling like this, I do like to just be in my sketchbook with a pencil because it's very satisfying. So the materials that we're using today are really, really simple. An HB pencil, I have got my old faithful mechanical HB pencil. This is just a cheap disposable one, nothing fancy. I've also got a 4B pencil, and that's to help us with some shading. If you don't have a 4B, another B pencil will do, preferably 3 up to 6, but you don't have to be too fussy about that. And I needed a eraser. If I need a sharpener, I'll get a sharpener too. The 4B pencil that I've got is one of the Faber-Castell 9000 pencils. These are relatively cheap, easy to get a hold of, good build quality, made from sustainable materials as well. So I'm going to focus on this undeveloped one. I've just noticed as well we've got Jock sloping about in the background in this picture. Usually when I'm taking these photos is when I'm out with the dogs, so it's not really surprising that he's loping about there in the background. So I thought we'll focus on this one, and let's just really have a wee look at this. There is a strange sort of tail down the bottom here. Again, I'll just zoom in the actual picture I've got here. So the stalk's in here, I can just see the stalk, but there's this little tail that's curled round that's got a jagged edge, so it's important that we put that in. But there's also some red spots down here at the bottom as well. This idea of using your eyeballs, and I did do a video on specifically using your eyeballs in the Drawing Tips for Beginners series. I'll link that in the end card and down in the description for you if you want to check that out. You know, if you want to have a little more information on observational skills when it comes to drawing. So ideally what we want to do here is we just want to start, and there's just nothing else to it. So we're looking at basic shape here, and we've got this kind of oval shape, but it's slightly wider at the top and the bottom, so we've got to take that into account. So slightly fatter there, and this the right hand side as we're looking at it comes in a little bit more. I should really just leave that there, shouldn't I? You can see this slopes in at more of an angle on this side. Now I'm not going for absolute carbon copy here, that's not what this is about. What today is about is just enjoying ourselves in our sketchbook and producing something that we've taken a little bit of time over, that's going to look pretty in our sketchbook, that also makes us feel as if we've achieved something. That's kind of what I'm aiming for to do. You might have a different aim, and that's okay too. But I say I'm not looking for absolute perfection and photorealism here. That's not what this is about. We're in the sketchbook. So I'm going to pretend that this foliage down the bottom, obviously this has come out the grass in one of the fields, and it's currently not being grazed, which is the reason I was in it. So we'll pretend that the foliage hasn't grown up round it too much. And I'm going to put in this funny little jaggy bit. Jaggy, that's a good word we use in Scotland. It just means jagged, or, you know, jaggy. And I'm just going to mark in these little spots as well. There's one about there, and then there's one down here-ish. Okay, and when we're working with something that's this kind of shape, I'll especially when it's got this much detail in, and down the bottom there's quite a lot of detail going on in these bits that I've sort of unfurled. What I like to do is I like to split it into thirds in my mind's eye. I'm a great believer in doing things a little bit at a time and not letting things overwhelm you. So this is a prime example. So in doing that on my sketchbook, I'm going to do it on here as well. Now this is, I suppose this is a very simplified grid method. You know, it's the same sort of principle. But I think what I'm going to do is just so that you can see what I'm doing here. Oh, brush end, that's not a very clever idea. Hang on, what else have I got lurking in here? Gold one? No, I don't want a gold one. Okay, a fine liner. What have we got here? This is a Unipin fine liner and it's a 0.1. Okay, that's really, really fine. That's it's a terrible choice. Let me try again. I actually can't reach over here now. I've moved everything. When I had my cave clear out, I moved everything around. Right, okay, so yeah, this is a Unipin fine liner and it's a number 1. Okay, that's better. You'll be able to see that. These are available in the Stash shop in a variety of nib widths as well if you fancy them. They're water and fade proof. They're pretty good. I quite like them and the nibs are fairly sturdy on them. So yeah, I'm just gonna very, very roughly about there so you can see what I'm talking about here as well. And you know what's really strange? I'm looking at that side by side and I've almost got that exactly to scale. That's a bit freaky. That never happens to me. Okay, well at least I know my lines are in the right place. So we've now got bite-sized chunks to work with. And what we want to think about then is, first of all, the outline shape. So this kind of nips in a little bit more. It's not quite as rounded on the top. And just down to where this top third ends, I'm looking at the shape of this outline, which is, you know, it's very, very apparent because it's against a much darker colour in the background, which is amazing for us because it's really clear. So again, if I just try and replicate that a little bit, now we've got this pokey bit here and that kind of comes up. Okay, so I've started that too far down, but that's okay. Now I like to take away some of my sketch lines as I go, and it's just basically so that I don't forget, because if I leave all my sketch lines in straight away, I find that by the time I go back to erase the ones I don't want, I've forgotten which ones it is I do want and which ones I don't want. So yeah, there's that. And then on this side, we've got two parts that stick out and they're slightly further up than this last jagged part here. So that's what I'm using as a gauge. And this is the thing as well, like, you know, use your observation, but pick out reference points within your own drawing. And it's a really good way to gauge things and see whether you've got things right or not. So this looks like a sort of top cap area because there's nothing on this top part that's got the same texture as underneath. There's another part then here that comes down and round. And then that joins in perfectly with that part there. Oh, I love it when a plan comes together. So again, going back to this outline, there's not much happening down this side. There's a little bit jutting out there. And then there's a bit that curls up just above where I've left that incline. And then it kind of starts to go like this and then we're into texture. So I'm just picking out the main parts now that curl. So there's another one under here. And then there seems to be a bit that's gone a bit wonky. It's kind of like going off up here. It is difficult to see in places if they're actually joined on to other parts just because it's so pale. But we don't need to worry too much about that. We can deal with that as we go along and kind of make a little bit of it up. That's okay. And then this looks like a bit of grass that's got stuck here. And this comes all the way down to my line. Again, that's pretty irregular, so I'm just kind of sketchying that in, you know. And then we'll just do the same all the way down here. Got a few bumpy bits, so I'm going into my second third now. I realise that these are very, very uneven thirds, but we'll call them thirds for the sake of it. I'm actually amazed at the amount of detail that I managed. That was just a quick snap with my phone whilst trying to keep the dogs out the road, because obviously if I crouch down on the ground and look at something, Pip especially has to come and see what it is I'm looking at, because it's obviously very interesting. So I'd like 1 foot out trying to keep her away and trying to keep my hand steady at the same time, so I think I've done fairly well. I have to give most of the merit to the properties of modern mobile phone cameras though. Oh, goodness me. Right, okay, so that's that side done. Over here it's a bit busier. Things are a bit more exciting on this side, so there's lots of little sort of wispy edges here, which I really like. They're actually very delicate. And that's the thing about mushrooms, they are not robust structures. They are very, very, very easily broken. And I think that's something I really like about them. I like mushrooms to eat as well. Mr. Jem does not like mushrooms. He's not a fan of the mushroom situation. I think it's to do with the texture. Like, I kind of get that. Not everyone likes the texture of mushrooms, but I like them. And then down the bottom here, it's kind of like, it's hairy, for want of a better phrase. I'm just going to carry on down because that's fairly straightforward. And then we've got all these little tiny hairy bits down the bottom because it gets very, very busy down the bottom here. But say we'll worry about that when the time comes. And the surface, even on the smoother parts, like here and here, there's still a little bit of texture, so make that line kind of a little bit wigglier. Okay, so if I concentrate on this middle section here, as I did with the top part, I'm just going to put in the really obvious sections. Just like almost like a way marker. It's like, yes, I know you're here. That was the part that I drew in earlier. And we've got a bit that curls around here. Almost looks like hair. You know, if someone with wavy hair had like layers chopped into their hair. And then down here there's just more sort of like a suggestion that it's starting to peel off rather than it's actually started to fold up. And then just above this line here where this hairy bit is, it kind of continues on. And there's some quite dark areas there as well. Then into this bottom third, there's a big part here. It's much darker down in this sort of section here. You can see obviously that's the shadow side where the light's not hitting as much. Our light source is coming this way. So what that means is, you know, everything's just a lot more defined. It's much, much easier to see all the different sections. So we'll add in a few of those. Now it goes without saying here, I'm not pressing very hard with my pencil. As long as you're not really like ramming down, you'll be able to erase out what you need to erase out. Okay, so I'm quite happy with that as a starting point. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take away those guidelines round the side where I'd split it into thirds. And then I'm just going to gently press with my kneaded eraser and lighten this up a little bit. Kind of take quite a lot of that away. Obviously, you still have to be able to see what you're doing. Don't go ham with your kneaded eraser or you'll have forgotten completely what's going on. Okay, this little part on the top, I don't know whether that's poop or like I don't know what that is. I'm going to exclude that from this particular image. Okay, so in order for this to pop out and stand out, this is a bit of deja vu here. If any of you watched the video on the Castle Arts pencils that I did like a grey outline around everything to make everything stand out. That's basically what we're going to do again today. Oh wow, everybody's going to be like, Gem's a one-trick pony. I'm going to use my 4B pencil for this. Any darker grade of pencil, softer grade of pencil that you've got from your HB is going to be fine for this, even if it is just like a 2B. But what this is going to do for us now is this is going to define our outside edge, and you don't have to be fussy on this. Like I'm not going to be putting a background in here. So basically I'm just doing this to make the actual mushroom itself stand out. And I'm only going to do it down this right hand edge to begin with. And that's going to be dark enough for us to be getting on with. Now you can hatch this outside part, or you know, you can just scribble it in, it's up to you. I'm personally not that fussed on it, so I'll just do what I'm doing. I'm more interested in making this outside edge pop out, and if I wanted to go back and tidy this up later, then so be it. But you can see already it's bringing out the shape really, really nicely. Okay, so now I'm going back to my HB pencil and just start working on these sections. So I'm taking the whitest part is these parts that have kind of like curled up. You can see them quite clearly there. They are standing out a bit more, as well as this cap part in the top because the light's hitting that most as well. So really what we want to do is we want to start working in some of these shadows. So it's easier for me to start at the right hand side and work my way left. Again, I seem to say that a lot these days. You might want to go in the opposite direction, you know, as if you're reading a book. That seems to be a bit more natural. But basically what I did out here is what I'm doing here, but just with my HB pencil. So I'm picking out, I'm going very lightly though, and I'm picking out the edges of these shapes, and I'm just trying to block in some of the different values that are here. Now this is very difficult with something that's just white, but by the same token it's actually a really good exercise and a really good way to find your way around these things and become a bit more comfortable with them. So again, I'm still really working in my thirds here because this is where it can become very overwhelming. Put in some of the detail and just enjoy it really. Now this is actually casting a shadow here, this section here, where this part's curled up. So, and these look like little strands that are still attached on this side, so I want to get them in. So you can see almost straight away I've almost like split off the cap. Now there is a tiny little string attaching that there, so I'm going to try and put that in a negative space. You might hear a lot of coughing from the little Jack Russell. She was in the vets yesterday having some teeth out, so they knocked her out, and because she's been intubated, her throat's obviously a wee bit scratchy and she keeps kind of hacking away for a wee bit, but she's not sick, don't worry. And then we can just indicate that darker section, just with a really light scrub of the pencil. So I've got this section here that's slightly darker, and I'm just rubbing that in with my pencil very gently and then adding in a few more little dots. Then we move to this section slightly further down. If you remember, this is where I put in my little bit of grass. I can make that a bit darker now. And then we can just add in some texture here. So now what I'm feeling is that the contrast isn't enough between this outside edge and the actual mushroom. So as I go along here, and I do this quite often, see when I'm drawing dog portraits and I'm drawing the dog in, when I'm drawing the sort of lighter and darker patches of the dog in, I will alter the background accordingly to give me the best contrast. So if we make that darker, and that's why I wanted to use a soft B pencil, so that we can get that depth in if that's what we need. I've got these few little bits here that I've separated so you can actually see the background through the sort of jaggy bits, as it were. That's very technical. So again, just mark them in a bit darker. Okay, so the texture here as well, it's like almost shredded. But if we follow the texture, basically we want sort of almost like flicky lines. Which is nice for me because I quite like a good flicky line. But they don't seem to all be going in the same direction as well. So this all seems to be heading this direction. And then these ones are all heading down into this section that I've actually drawn in that crosses that. This is what I'm saying about, really taking your time. This isn't about finishing anything, and it's not about creating a really perfect drawing. It's about spending the time methodically going through something, and then when you pull back and look at it, you've got something that looks very much like a finished image. And there's something very therapeutic about that. Certainly for me anyway, I don't know whether you guys agree or disagree. And this is one of the reasons why I enjoy pencil so much. It's so simple to get going and actually create something and put off that sort of weird procrastination that sometimes we do, even though we want to do something, because you just get stuck straight in. And even if you're not entirely in the mood for it, it does not take you long to get in a groove with stuff like this, because you're literally just picking up the pencil and putting it on the paper and that's it. This just looks like someone with a really, really crazy hairdo that they need to go to the hairdressers and get fixed. So what I'm going to do now is just bring my my 4B all the way around here, and I'm going to try and match up the shading with what I've done on this side, try and get the value the same. Okay, lovely jubbly. So we're going to move on to our next section now. And the sections here, if I just refer back to this, in this half, the sections are very defined, they're really big. And that's nice and easy for us to pick out and put some shading in. This side is considerably more iffy because there's not as much going on. So we're going to have to make it still look like part of our mushroom without it, but still following on what's going here. So everything's going to be much more delicate in this side. And I've done it naturally here as well, but you can see the shadows are heavier there than they are over here. And that theme is going to continue all the way down this side. So we kind of have to keep that in our brains, as we're working away here. So I'm moving down into this middle third now. And there's some areas here where the texture is much more pronounced than others. When you look at it closely, some just do look like dark areas. But down this right hand edge here, this is where I'm really concentrating on this darker section. So I'll just bring this, just darken down this area. In this part here, I talked about there being a lot less detail, and a lot of it's probably to do with the light source. So I'm going to kind of just put indications in here rather than going for full-on texture, because you don't seem to be able to see a huge amount of it. If we were working in coloured pencil, this would be slightly different, and that's something that maybe I might do a little bit of in my own time, because I do like working in coloured pencil. And then we've got another sort of darker patch here. So I'm going through the motions here of putting some of this detail in. And what I will do is, once we've gone through the rest of the mushroom as it is, I'll go back in and darken down the areas that need darkened down so that we've got this nice contrast on this side and this side. But for now I just want to make sure I've got the bulk of the detail in that I want in. So moving down to our final third here, this is where things get interesting, shall we say. So if we want to create that illusion of these kind of pieces here, you can do this with your 4B pencil or your darker pencil. And if you flick upwards into the shape, that means you're going to get the fine end of your flick moving into the mushroom, which is going to give that nice delicate edge to it. So if I just show you here, and then gradually we can fill this in. So we can darken down this edge, and then we can just start joining those up. And that really helps you to get that nice feathered edge. And I'm trying my best not to lose the shape of this part underneath, which I thought was very interesting. And then the stem is significantly darker under here, so I want to do the same thing and just mark in these. And then I'm going to darken this down in here. Now really you can decide for yourself based on how much time you've got as well. You know, how much detail you actually want to put into something like this. I mean, you could spend days, you know, just going back and forth and really perfecting every single little crevice and crease. And if you've got the time to do that, I do encourage you to do that. That's something that can be very satisfying as well. But here, from the point of view of balance and enjoyment and video length, you know, you can pick and choose, but the whole point of doing things like this in your sketchbook is there's no rules to it. It's up to you how far you want to take it. It's up to you how much you want to do. And that is actually most of the fun. Okay, so now I've got the full contrast around the shape as well. When I look at this tonally, I can see that I don't have the dark areas in here as dark as I need them to be, whereas you can see here it's pretty obvious. So I'm going to use my 4B pencil for this, and I'm just going to start working my way back down. So again, just being very, very methodical. I think I want to darken down this strange little whatever it is. We need to start exaggerating this as well to give us that variation in the value. So in certain areas, I'm just going to start adding a little bit more pencil into it. There we go, that looks a little bit better. I still feel like I could have more in here. Okay, there you go. I'm quite happy with that. I think we could go darker down here as well. But for a sketch in a sketchbook, just in graphite, using 2 pencils, that is just exactly what I was needing today. A little bit of chill out time. So let's have a wee zoom out now. So that's just a really simple way to enjoy yourself in your sketchbook with graphite and something as simple as a mushroom. So if you'd like to try something like this for yourself, as I said at the beginning of the video, I do have a selection of photographs I've taken of different types of mushrooms, and those are over on the Cave website. If you click on that resources tab, while you're there you can check out the stash shop. There's some new items in today because it's Sunday, and maybe you can treat yourself to a new art supply while you're there. So I hope this has been useful for you today. I've really enjoyed this just because I love doing stuff like this. I do think I'm probably going to draw this little dude minus Jock, and I'm probably going to do it in coloured pencil, so I'll stick that up on Instagram once I've drawn that so that you can see what I've done there. And if it's something you'd be interested in seeing in colour pencil, maybe we can revisit that in another video at a later stage. So thank you very much for watching, everyone. Thanks for coming hanging out. Hit the like button please, that would be lovely, and I shall see you back on the Cave on Thursday. Yes, on Thursday for another video. So have a great day, everyone. Bye bye for now.